Hey buddies, Misfuggy here, coming at you with a Hearthstone video, and that feels really weird to say because this is the first Hearthstone video on the channel. Today I want to talk about 10 legendaries you will need from United and Stormwind expansion that's coming out on Hearthstone tomorrow. But before we get into it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. You have no idea how much it helps me out, and let's get into it. The first card that I want to talk about that is going to be a must-get for me personally. This might be a little controversial, but I recommend getting the new Rogue Legendary Masquerade. Masquerade is a crazy rogue card that disguises you as a different class, and if you guys have been reading discussions on how competitive users are using it or how the pros are using it, you'll know that it's actually not that great of a card. Now, the reason why it's not that great of a card at the moment is because right now all the decks that you want to play in Hearthstone, all the meta decks, are rush aggro. For the most part, all the decks that are in the meta are usually the type of decks that play in a certain way no matter what matchup they're up against. So if you're playing Rogue, you have this card in your deck, and you are a Warrior. Say you're playing against Aggro Shaman. Aggro Shaman's more than likely not going to play any different than how he would against a Rogue, against a Warrior, against a Priest. They're going to play the same. Their objective is to send out an elemental, send out other elementals to buff up their other elementals, have good control in their hand, damage you as much as possible, get weapons in hand. They're going to play the same way against every other class, and most decks in the meta are playing the same exact way against no matter what hero they play against. So Masquerade right now is not going to be seen to influence the meta at all, I feel, but I feel like it's a very fun card you can have to play with buddies. That's one of the aspects I like most about this card, is that I can really mess with my buddies when I play with them. And if we ever get into a meta that's more mid-range and control, Masquerade could influence the way your opponent plays against you. Like, it's like, oh, you're playing against a priest, so maybe I won't put all my minions on the board, or I'm playing against Warrior, so I'm not gonna flood my board like I normally do because maybe he'll play Brawl. It's a very interesting card. It changes the way the opponent would play against you, and that's why I think it's a very important card to have in case you ever want to mess someone up. Now we move on to the next entry, which I think is actually just a generally really good card as opposed to Masquerade, and that is High Lord 4-Dragon. Now, I have a history with Paladins, and I really like 4-Dragon because of the things he's done in the World of Warcraft lore, but we're not here to talk about that. High Lord 4-Dragon has this amazing ability that every single time a minion loses Divine Shield, you give a minion in your hand 5/5. That's a huge amount. That's the biggest hand buff we've gotten in a long time for Standard. And right off the bat, bare bones for High Lord 4-Dragon. If you just have him on the board, he gets hit once, you get one minion that's 5/5. That is so free, that is so useful. It's going to help a lot, especially since a lot of Paladin decks are mid-range. That's going to let you put a big buffy minion on the board very, very easily with not a lot of cost. Just 6 cost for a 5/5 plus 5/5 buff to anybody in your hand. That's absolutely crazy. I think that's one of the best cards we have coming out right now. And I'm a Paladin main, so I'm really excited to play with that card, especially since we're going to get a lot of Divine Shields out onto the board, since we do have the Recruit quest that is more than likely going to be using 5/5 legendary that turns all your recruits have Divine Shield. So I could see that being played in there as well, since Quest Paladin is going to be a deck a lot of people are running just for shits and giggles, or just in case it's meta, because it's really fun. It's very, very easy deck to play. But you know what card that isn't really easy to play? It's Grand Magnus Antonidas. Antonidas is a really cool card because if you casted a fire spell for the last 3 turns, you basically just get to cast 3 fireballs, and if the opponent has an empty board, that's 18 damage on face. Now, at the moment, the deck recipes that recommend this card has a lot of spell damage, so it seems like Blizzard's intention was to make these fireballs have spell power to it as well, but at the moment spell damage doesn't actually affect the fireballs that Antonidas casts, so that doesn't actually affect it very, very much. Now, the reason why I say this is a kind of a hard card to play is because you gotta either play around the fact that you're hoping on drawing Antonidas in a 30 card deck, 2, have 3 fire spells. So of course we do have tradable, so we can search for tech cards, and we do have some spells that shuffle in fire spells into your deck. There's a decent amount of fire spells support that is being added to Mage, so it's not as hard as it would have been if we didn't get all the support, but still you're chancing on the fact, if you don't have this in hand, that you're casting 3 fire spells per turn, and you're not just wasting the mana just to use it and hoping that you draw into this card. And if you do draw into this card late game and you didn't cast any fire spells last turn, you gotta waste 3 turns before you can even use this card. So it's kind of an iffy card to me. I think it's going to be really, really fun to see how the pros play it. It's really, really honestly an awesome card. It's a 8 mana, 18 damage across the board on the enemy field, which is just absolutely crazy. And I'm really excited to see a mage kill me with this card if I have no minions on the board. I'm just generally excited to see how a lot of these legendaries are going to be. And I'm excited to play Antonidas in my mage deck because I do love mage a lot. But I do foresee this to be a really powerful legendary, so it's one that you'll definitely want to get when the expansion releases. Now, the next card you probably want to get from the set is Dark Bishop Benedictus. I think that's how I said. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, but it doesn't matter. So the start of the game, if you only have shadow spells in your deck, you enter shadow form. Now, shadow form is you change your hero powers from heal 2 to anybody to deal 2 to anybody with 2 mana. And it's very, very interesting to see how this card's going to play. And I feel like it's going to be a really fun tech option to play in Priest. Now, a lot of the cards you want to play on Priest are holy. So you do have to get rid of a lot of cards that benefit you as Priest just to play this card. So the decks that are going to be playing this aren't going to be quite as powerful as you normally would see Priests, like Control Priests. But I'm really interested to see how Priest players are going to use this card to their benefit and see if they can kind of get a Raza out of it. Of course, that's more in Wild that you're going to get to see Raza, but that's fine. I'm really just interested to see how this card is going to shape up in the meta for Standard. And it's an essential pickup on anybody's list if you want to play Priest, because it's just a really fun card you can build around. All the cards I really like to pick up for a set are cards you can build a deck around, and I think that's really, really cool to have this card force you to not play any holy spells when majority of the spells you want to play as Priest is holy. So it really makes you play it very, very differently. It's going to make Priest players build their decks so differently than they normally do. Next card I think is going to be actually really, really powerful is Jace Darkweaver. Now, right now we don't have that many great fel spells, but this card is basically a given that you want to get just because in the future, if there's any fel spells that basically just hit the enemy for a lot of damage or just targets you and gives you a lot of attack as Demon Hunter, this card is going to allow you to synergize with those future spells so good. It's basically just a pickup in case there's fel spells in the future that get released that are just so incredibly useful that you add it to every single Demon Hunter deck. So I feel like Jace Darkweaver is going to see a lot of cool combos, and I'm really excited to see an OTK deck from Jace Darkweaver, but I'm not sure how quite that would work. Generally, right now, Jace Darkweaver doesn't seem like it's going to impact the meta too much, but I'm really excited to see what decks is going to be built out of this, and I'm definitely going to pick it up just so I can build a deck around fel spells, because it's going to be really fun to just do that, especially since the Demon Hunter quest isn't quite that good, so this is the only legendary they got that's actually decent. Now, the next card I want to talk about is Cornelius Rome. I think Cornelius Rome is a really powerful card that you're going to see in a lot of decks because I believe it's a neutral card. Let me double check. Yeah, it's a neutral card, and it basically guarantees when you put it on the board, you draw at least 2, and if your opponent doesn't get rid of it, it's a draw 4. So that's really, really good for 6 mana. You get 6 mana for a body on the board, 4/5. That's like not that easy to kill. Sure, 5 HP is not that hard to kill, but it's not like it's 1 HP, 2 HP, 3 HP. It's 5 HP, and it's a guaranteed 2 draw. It's basically has so much board presence just because of the fact it allows you to draw so much. So the opponent is going to pretty much be forced to get rid of it, and even if they do get rid of it, it's still +2 on hand. That's very, very strong for a 6 mana cost legendary that can be put into any deck. It's definitely a card that's going to see play either in decks that need draw, like a lot of the fast decks that need draw, or just generally put in on an off-meta build just to guarantee some draw. And if you wanted to, you could, in theory, in Wild, give it to your opponent and then just keep it on the board and eventually deck them out and fatigue it. So it does have that potential of, in the Wild, giving your opponent fatigue damage and decking out. So that's really, really cool if you're trying to make a deck that's all around that. I just generally think it's a really powerful card that can be teched into any deck, and that's why I recommend getting it. Next card I'm going to stress people to get in the next set is definitely Raid the Docks. Now, Raid the Docks is going to force you to play Pirates, and that's very, very interesting to me because Pirates haven't been seen played, especially with Warrior, in a very long time. So I'm very interested to see how the meta is going to warp around this card in case it does, or how Warrior players in the next coming weeks are going to play Pirates in their decks, because most of the time you don't want to run Pirates in your deck, but this quest line, like a lot of quest lines, forces your deck to play very differently than it normally does, and the rewards it gives are actually pretty good. Like, Raid the Docks is one of the better quest lines in the game right now. Like, right off the bat, you just have to play 3 pirates and you draw a weapon. That's really, really good because drawing a weapon allows you to get, assuming you're running one particular kind of weapon, a particular weapon that you will need or want in most cases against a lot of opponents, because there's a lot of weapons in Warrior that are generally just really good. So I feel like that reward is really, really awesome. And then next, you have to just play 2 pirates for creative distraction. You play 2 damage to a random enemy twice. Now, that reward honestly isn't that good, but you could potentially clear some enemies on the board if they're damaged already, or you could damage an enemy and then use execute. So that's pretty useful in case you think about it like that. And then after that, you just have to play 2 more pirates, and then you get Captain Rokara, I think it's called. And Captain Rokara has this battle cry, Summon the Juggernaut. So it's a 5 mana 7/7, like all the rewards at the end, just on the board, and then you summon another minion called the Juggernaut, which the start of your turn, start of every single one of your turns, summon a pirate, equip a weapon, and you fire 2 cannons that deal 2 damage. Now, it doesn't say to enemies, but it's probably to enemies. That's the start of every single one of your turns, and that's a minion that cannot be targeted or removed. It's just 4 damage on the board against your opponent every single start of your turn, +1 on hand and +1 on the board. It's just really, really good. I can see this being run in the meta everywhere. I don't think it's that hefty of a cost to get this reward, and the reward keeps on giving. It's one of the better rewards in the game, honestly. It's so freaking good. Definitely get it if you're a Warrior main. The next card on the list I think that is really, really good and can be teched into a decent amount of builds, but mostly for Warrior and Paladin, is King Varian of Stormwind. He has this amazing ability that gives you +3 on hand, so you basically play him, you draw a rush, taunt, and divine, and he gets all those effects. The reason why I say this is more of a Warrior/Paladin deck is because a lot of decks don't usually run Divine Shield, and some decks don't even run Rush. Now, you could play the 5 mana 3/3 with Divine Shield that draws your highest cost minion in your deck and put it in your hand, and you could potentially get your Divine Shield that way. But I feel like this card won't be used in a lot of decks unless you're Paladin Warrior, only because Divine Shield's all about Paladin, and there's a lot of good rush in Warrior. I feel like in most decks, this is going to just be a +2 in hand in case people don't have the Divine Shield, because there's not that many good Divine Shield cards. It's mainly, the main problem here is the Divine Shield. Like, there's plenty of good rush and taunt cards. There's not a lot of good neutral Divine Shield cards. So this card is mainly going to be a pickup in case you want to play Paladin. But I feel like this card is a really good card in case they release any Divine Shield cards that you want to pick up in the future. It's definitely one of the better cards that are being released in the sets. You can use it to eliminate a threat that has 7 health or less without damaging a 7/7 on the board. And it's just 8 mana for 3+ in your hand and eliminating 1 person on the board. It has a lot of value for being 8 mana, and it's one of the better legendaries because of that. Now, next card on the list that is definitely going to see a lot of play in Hunter is Defend the Dwarven District. Now, if you played in the past and know what Priest Rava is, or Raza, I think that's what it is. It's basically just that. So the questline requires you to deal damage with 2 different spells. So right off the bat, Hunter has a lot of spells that just deal damage. Like right on top of my head, I can think of Explosive Shot, Arcane Shot, Piercing Shot, that one mana thing that deals 1 damage and summons a 1/1 rush minion. There's like so many different Hunter spells that just deal damage. So this is a very easy quest to just tech into any deck and get the reward. So the first reward is causes your hero power to target any minion you want. So that's very, very good. It's just 2 damage on any minion you want as a permanent buff on your Hunter, and that could be used to control the board very, very easily. And then after you do that, you just have to deal 2 more damage with Take the High Ground with spells. Use 2 spells to deal more damage, so that sets your hero power to 0. That's very, very good, especially since you will be wanting to use your hero power as much as possible in case you still want to rush your opponent. So you could play this as a control, but you mainly probably want to see it in the current meta to use to hit your opponent. A 2 damage to your opponent every single turn for 0 mana. So basically your opponent is forced to take 2 damage every single turn, which, you know, already kind of happens, but it allows the hunter to do it for free now. So they can keep their combo pieces and allow them to do combos in case they want to in their hand still. And then knock them down, which just rewards your final reward. You got to deal damage with 2 more spells, so it's just 6 spells that you need to deal that deal damage. And in current meta decks for hunters, you have more than 6, so that's a very easy quest line to complete. And then when you finally do that, you get Tavish Master Marksman. For the rest of the game, spells you cast refresh your hero power. Now, I think this is a very interesting card, because, like I said, it makes you get Raza Priest, basically. The reason why I think it's so interesting is because this is gonna make hunters want to play a lot of low-cost spells. I'm kind of hit or miss on that. So a lot of the hunter spells that are good, in my opinion, aren't usually the lower-cost ones. Sure, we have Tracking, and then the deal 1 damage to summon a 1/1 Hyena. But I can't think of a lot of other 1-cost spells. I guess you could discover a Death Rattle minion if you want. I don't feel like this card is going to be used to combo a bunch of hero powers. Sure, you could use that as like a fun little gimmicky build, but I feel like most of the time, this is just gonna allow you to, you know, use your hero power, bam, you hit the opponent. All right, I use Piercing Shot, hit the minion, goes to the opponent, okay, hit another 2 damage on the hero, and that's like it. It's like, your turns are just gonna allow you to capitalize on your hero power more, but not to the way that people are going to be expecting. Like, you're probably not going to see a hunter use their hero power like 10 times in 1 turn, or even like 5 times. You're probably going to see them use their hero power maybe 2 to 3 times, and that's okay, because that's 6 to 4 damage. That's basically a 200% or 100% increased damage on every single turn, so that's very, very cool. It's definitely one of the best quest lines in the release that is going to be coming out, so you definitely want to pick that up if you're planning on playing Hunter, or even if you're not, you should just get it, because Hunter's going to be insane with this. I feel like it's awesome. And the last card I recommend everyone to get is Bolnir Hammerbeak. Now, Hammerbeak has this awesome ability. After you play a Battlecry minion, which Shaman has a ton of right off the bat, you repeat the first Battlecry you played this turn. Now, that can combo into so many things that I can't even think of the most optimal thing it can combo. It's definitely going to be played mostly in Wild. Like, there's a lot of decent Battlecry cards in Standard, but there's so many better Battlecry cards in Wild. There's that Old God that gives your corrupted cards back into your hand. You could potentially play this card and then use the 0 cost 2 mana into hand to play that card, right? And then you get all your corrupted cards back in your hand. And then if you just have 1 corrupted card was a Battlecry, and since that corrupted card added to hand is going to cost 0, you can repeat that card to get infinite cards in your hand, and you could potentially use that to get so many different things in your hand. You could basically just fill your hand with super powerful corrupt cards that cost 0. It's just insane how many different things you can do with Hammerbeak. Like, Hammerbeak is going to have so many implications in Wild, but I'm really mostly excited, like all these cards, to see what it's going to do in Standard. It's going to do a lot of cool things, I feel, in Standard, and I'm just really excited to see what it's going to do. So definitely pick that up, because I could foresee turning into a really powerful card that all Shamans are going to use. Alright, buddies, that's all for today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I hope y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.
And the last shall be first to immerse in a pass out heat, facing him up with a moxie melt till he woke up drowning in tchotchke hell. War in a cave with a torch on a wall, then a window arrangement of porcelain dolls.